can tell, the East Coast Bias Boys are here at Radio Row, Super Bowl 59. We're in the flesh. Joe House, Raheem Palmer, and John Jastremski. Let's get right to it. It's the Chiefs. It's the Eagles. Second time in 3 years. And, you know, House, I mentioned that Chief fatigue. I think we've all had it. The Eagles, been there and done that. But the matchup, it's juicy. It's a revenge angle for the Eagles. It's Barkley and what he's provided as a 2,000-yard rusher. And then Kansas City sells themselves going for a three-peat, which we've been around a long time. We've never seen it. The Patriots dominated. Super Bowl 59, a lot to offer.
Yeah, I don't feel any fatigue whatsoever. I'm thrilled to have the Chiefs with a chance at a three-peat. These don't come down the pike very often. And the thing about this one, some people are saying that the rematch is boring. What's boring about Saquon Barkley rushing for 2,000 yards? This Eagles team is radically different than that Philadelphia team from a couple of years ago. And that, to me, sets up a matchup, a cat and mouse game that I really can't wait to get into, especially with the different coordinators on the Philadelphia side. These dudes have been around the block a little bit. Love Vic Fangio and Mahomes, even with the lack of success that he's had against it. The storylines just come up and pop you right in the face. I can't wait to get down with this thing.
And what's interesting, Raheem, is that we were here 2 years ago talking about this matchup.
Yeah.
And Philadelphia kind of was bulldozing everybody in the NFC. You looked at their road to the Super Bowl. It was a giant team that overachieved. It was not any good. They knocked out Brock Purdy in the opening series. And then they get into the Super Bowl. Their offense delivered. Their defense did not. This version of Philadelphia, to me, is a better version of the Eagles than the one we saw in Glendale and in Phoenix, because you have Saquon Barkley. There's better. I know Steichen and Gannon are head coaches. I feel better about the coaching with Fangio and with Kellen Moore doing their thing. And I just like the overall feel of the Eagles from a roster standpoint. Better this time around than 2 years ago.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think the big key is the defense. You got guys like Jalen Carter. I think he has the potential to absolutely wreck this game. And if you watch the Philadelphia Eagles this year, what they did to that Cincinnati Bengals offense that was scoring on everybody, it tells you how amazing this defense is. And then when you bring in Saquon Barkley into the fold, a guy who rushed for 2,000 yards and sat out week 18, it lets you know how dangerous this team is.
So you're in a spot, House, that scares me. Not you, but just if you're going to side with Philadelphia in this game. And guess what? There are a lot of compelling arguments to make the case that the Eagles can win. However, House, I'm going to warn you something. I was in this exact chair a year ago when I looked at every matchup and I said, the San Francisco 49ers are better than the Chiefs. They're going to beat them. We all know what happened 2 years ago. I thought Philadelphia, pound for pound, was a better team than the Chiefs. Got off to a lead. We know what happened. Is there a script where the Eagles can win a close game? Because my feeling is, no. I've seen the Chiefs in so many of these games snake it, find a way. Raheem bets them live. Everybody's giddy, except for me, because I'm on the other side. I almost feel like if you're making the case for Philadelphia to go and win this game, they got to go and win and lay the smack down.
So, look, I don't have any quibble with that approach to it. But I also think it's possible the jig could be up at some point. Last year's Super Bowl, you mentioned it, there were 7 fumbles in that football game. And the Chiefs were on the correct side of quite a few of those. There were penalty calls that went I won't go down that path. But look, at some point, and I told you guys, on this show, I think it was week 14 that I was looking for an opportunity to fade the Chiefs, because at some point, simple math tells you that the world doesn't simply revolve around a Kansas City axis.
You sure?
You sure? There is lots of proof on the side of that, but at some point the ball will not bounce the Chiefs' way. It could be in a straight up game where I'm looking at, I'll do the matchups. We can do the matchups. I like the Eagles.
So you're willing to bet against Michael Jordan. That's what you're telling us.
Here's the thing. There's a plenty of ways to cover your
I understand that.
Okay.
There are plenty of ways to cover
And
it.
listen, I think you have been all over this. You mentioned it on our pod last week, and I know you're going to hit on it here. There's a script in these games with Kansas City. They fall behind.
Yes.
They fell behind
they
against
do.
the Niners, down by 10. They fell behind against the Eagles. They fell behind against the Niners. So are you more than willing, Raheem, to say, you know what? First half, I think House's Eagles will have the lead?
So I've been explaining this to people all week. My model actually makes the Eagles 3 to 3.5 point favorites. So I actually think the wrong team is favored. But you have to take into account who has the better quarterback. That's Patrick Mahomes. Who has the better coach? That's Andy Reid and Spagnuolo. So it's very difficult to bet against those guys for a full game. In the first half, I think you can play the Eagles. I think the Eagles are going to come out. They're going to pass a little bit more than people think they will. I think they will take the lead. And then in the second half, you're going to see Mahomes do what he typically does. So that's how I'm looking. Eagles first half, and then try to play the Chiefs live.
So you mentioned the creative ways you want to kind of play this.
Yes.
You're leaning in a Philadelphia perspective side. How exactly is that case made, House?
So the very first thing is to make sure that you have that Chiefs outcome covered and make it lucrative for yourself. The Cousin Sal has been giving this out for 2 years now. Take Dream's position on the Eagles in the first half and bet the Chiefs to win the game. That is available right this second on the FanDuel Sportsbook at plus 750. That is one way to cover yourself. And then I have a couple of teasers. We're at the stage of the season where you must put a total leg alongside the outcome leg. I have the Eagles plus 7.5, and I have them under 55 and over 43. So you can
really are covered every which way.
Giant 12-point middle. If it lands in the middle, you win both bets.
I'm glad you mentioned the total. No, because it segues exactly to where I want to go here, Raheem.
Mm-hmm.
These teams played 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Shootout galore. Philadelphia did whatever they wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
Kansas City came alive in the second half. The Hurts fumble was key, changed the game. Kansas City does their thing in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
These iterations of these two teams, don't they kind of lean you towards an under?
No.
They don't.
So for me, I just think both teams are going to be passing a lot more. Now, this is how I tend to look at things with Super Bowls. Super Bowls always start off slow. If you look at 14 out of the last 20 Super Bowls with a total of 48, they have gone under in the first half. So the way I like to play this is second half, highest scoring half, minus 105. You watched the Super Bowl last year. How many points were scored in the first half? They put up like 30 plus points in the second half. So I like to go second half, highest scoring half. Also like second half over 23.5. So I think you're going to see a lower scoring first half. And in the second half, all chaos breaks loose as one or both of these teams are chasing each other.
So you mentioned your way of teasing it. Which one do you prefer? It seems like you prefer the underside of things.
I honestly prefer over 43. That's the way that
That's
I
a low
look at it.
total.
So
Then under a 57 or 58 is pretty high, though.
yeah, but Dream's chaos theory could definitely come home to roost. We've seen it in Super Bowls before, and we've seen it with these Chiefs. I love both of his second half bets. Those are both, to me, outstanding ways of sizing this game up and to go ahead and make a little investment, cover off that aspect as well.
Okay, make the case for me to how Philadelphia wins this game. For me, it's pretty simple. We saw James Cook 2 weeks ago, second half, won all over the Chiefs. The biggest mistake is Buffalo inexplicably stopped using him. They didn't give him the football enough. Barkley, no knock on James Cook, tremendous back. Barkley's a different caliber of running back, and he has been all year. And he's been the engine for Philly all year. Is your case for the Eagles heavy dose of Barkley and that defense and Carter and the defensive line doing their thing, or is there something else I'm missing?
No, it's literally trench warfare, and it does indeed start on the offensive side, which to me, I think this iteration of the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line is the best that they've had in the entirety of their run, which is a really remarkable thing considering
Kelsey's
their
retired.
center. But they just pick right back up. The guy that replaced Kelsey has had an incredible season. And to me, the thing that really reveals itself is if you go back to, I think, week 14, Kansas City's run defense has been very vulnerable.
It's leaky.
Yes.
They've been giving up. It wasn't just, you had the good example of Cook. Before that, Joe Mixon had 18 carries for 88 yards. I mean, honestly, Houston was in that game. They beat themselves with turnovers. And if you go week by week, from that week 14 on, the running backs that the Kansas City Chiefs faced all had performances that were above their season averages in terms of yards per carry, in terms of yards after contact. I'm not sure what the explanation is for why that's the case, but I certainly like the idea of the Eagles establishing themselves. I think the script is what Dream described. Philly comes out throwing, and then it's Saquon time. So that is the way that I sort of size this up.
Here's a question I have for you, because we all know special teams plays a huge role in these postseason games. Now, you have Harrison Butker for the Chiefs, but Jake Elliott, he hasn't been very
dreadful
good all year
dreadful.
long. How much is that a concern?
Important distinction. Jake Elliott indoors
Dome
versus Jake Elliott outdoors.
That's a good point.
All of his garbage misses have been outdoor misses. And believe me, there's one that was still sticks in my craw from that Rams game that took that 6.5 down to 6. That big fat loser. But I'm not going to sit here and say I have the utmost confidence in Jake Elliott, but I do like the fact that they're in a dome.
So my fear factor here with Philadelphia, Raheem, they have the wide receivers to go and make plays. They're going to have Barkley doing his thing. I mean, the fact that FanDuel is setting the line at 110, and I'm not talking anybody out of playing the over, tells you what I think about Saquon Barkley. I know Jalen Hurts played well against Washington. The Washington defense and what Spagnuolo and what McDuffie and what the Chiefs can do is an entirely different breed. That, to me, is my fear factor. I don't feel great about Hurts going into this game.
I think Hurts is being a little underrated.
Interesting.
And I think he has a secret weapon, and it's the tight end, because we know the Chiefs, they struggle to defend tight ends. They've allowed almost 1,200 yards and 106 receptions to tight ends. Who's been the biggest player for the Eagles in the postseason? It's been Dallas Goedert. And there's a reason why his prop has gone from 47.5 to 50.5 receiving yards. So I like his over, and I also like his over receptions, 4.5. And I think they're going to be able to run the ball with Saquon Barkley, and Dallas Goedert is going to be his security blanket.
Okay, so I'm right there with you with Goddard. I love it. We talked about it when these prop lines came out. He's been very good to us out throughout this postseason. But are we concerned now with this line going up? Like at 46.5 to 50.5, does that change much for you?
No.
Me neither.
You know it would scare me? 65.5.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, why are they doing 50? We're there. He might get it in the first half. I really think that Philly's going to establish RPO once they get the pass going, like a first series script. And I'll tell you this, when you were asking Dream about Hurts' concerns, I go to this spot. The pass that he threw on 4th and 5, it was a very pivotal pass.
That was a dime.
To A.J.
Absolute
Brown,
dime.
right on top of Marshawn Lattimore's head. I'll just leave it at that. That showed both a confidence, it showed a poise, it showed a confidence in the coaching staff. That was not a high probability play. It was an absolute dime. It was a game-winning throw because it did set the arc of the game in a Philly direction. And that to me clears up any kind of concerns Hurts-wise.
We have a lot more to get to as far as the prop market is concerned. Maybe a long shot other than the quarterback for Super Bowl MVP. Raheem and I were talking yesterday. He's got one. I got one. We got a lot more coming your way from Radio Row. Super Bowl 59. It's the East Coast Bias Boys. We're coming right back.